Well, this is Ed Stetzer Live, and it is great to be here with you on another Saturday. It's a beautiful Saturday morning in Southern California, where I'm broadcasting from. Of course, our team's there in Chicago. We have this great team that puts this program together each and every week. My producer, Karen Hendren, my associate producer, Lisa Jempty, Merle St. James, our engineer, and Rihanna's on the phones today. And we do want to have your calls, and I want to remind you of such. So my name's Ed Stetzer. I'm the dean of the Talbot School of Theology at Biola University. Sometimes people say, wait a second, you're not with like Moody Bible Institute? No, friends, partners. Actually, if you look at the, I don't even know, the great-great-grandparents of both, maybe great-great-great-grandparents of both Moody Bible Institute and Biola University, which is where Talbot is, they're the same people. And so it's fun connections between the two. Thankful for the kingdom-mindedness of Mark Jobe and the Moody Radio team that has this guy from a whole nother part of the country. It's like another, world out here. I was just in Chicago, and what we call that is back east. When you're in California, you go to Chicago, you're going back east. But anyway, so let me remind you, of course, too, if you want to listen to this program at any time. I was at my church, and someone at my church said to me, "Yeah, I listened to your podcast," and I'm like, well, it's not a podcast. It's a radio show. It's on Moody Radio and 250 partners and affiliates and all around the country. And it's like, and I think they thought I was like insulted that it was a podcast. But the reality is, more and more of you. I was just looking at a list of these things. Like many of you listen what we actually call asynchronously. You're not listening to terrestrial radio. You're actually listening at another time by using a podcast. So how do you do that? Well, you can actually do that by going to edstetzerlive.com and then clicking through, and there's actually the Moody Radio app, and you can listen to all of our programs via podcast. So that enables you to have a whole array of programs. The amazing Chris Brooks, by the way, Talbot grad, but the amazing Chris Brooks is one of our amazing radio hosts. I listen to him via podcast. There's lots of others as well. So what then is this all about? Well, what we do in this program is we have conversations that we think you'll find helpful and hopeful. That's kind of a consistent theme, and how do I put this without being too critical of other places in the world? Well, let me just do it. A lot of talk radio is a train wreck. It's a never-ending group of people who are angry, and people calling in who are more angry, getting each other more angry. And it doesn't really help us to move forward on mission together. So what we do at Ed Stetzer Live, what we do at Moody Radio, is actually we try to go a different way. We try to do what we think is a more Christ-like way. We want you to understand the culture. We want you to be faithful and fruitful in the culture. We want you to have healthy relationships. That's going to be part of our theme today. We want you to be on mission and following Christ as he leads. That's a big part of our ongoing conversation here. So that's why, I pick the guests. So that's why I pick the guests that I do. And today, our guest today is going to help us to do that very thing. So he's going to help us to kind of walk through some of these challenges that we experience as individuals and kind of how do we grow. So Erin Moniz is going to be our guest today. She's a chaplain. She's an associate chaplain at Baylor University, director of the chapel. She's deeply committed to helping emerging adults navigate their intimate relationships. And that's actually what she wrote her, excuse me for one second. That's actually what she wrote her PhD dissertation on. I've gotten to know her when she invited me out to Berry College. I went to school in Rome, Georgia, and at the other school in Rome, Georgia, but she invited me to Berry College. Got to know her then. Then she went off to Baylor, where she serves as associate chaplain. She's a trained conciliator and a dedicated speaker and writer on the theology of intimacy and relationships. And then recently published Knowing and Being Known, Hope for All Our Intimate Relationships. Now, I should say, Erin, I just told you that you wrote your dissertation on the topic. And sometimes when someone says dissertation turns into a book, they're like, oh, no, I don't want to read that. But the book is very much written for regular people like me who can read and engage and understand in the topic. But I'm kind of like want to start with, like, how did you get interested in this topic so much that you write a doctoral dissertation on it and then a book on it? So again, welcome to the program and give us a little backstory on the writing.
Oh, Ed, it's so good to be with you. Thank you for having me and having this conversation. Yeah, I do have a doctoral dissertation written on this that no one should read. It is out there for those who just really just want to dig into something. But it's No one should read it. But this book that came out of that resulted from being a college chaplain and working with college students. And gosh, if they don't spend about 80% of the time in my office talking about their relationships and getting a chance to actually do the research was a real treat because I'd already been trying to figure out if I was actually helping them.
Hmm.
I wasn't sure if what I was giving them was any better or different. I just knew that they weren't having healthy relationships consistently, despite consuming Christian content to that effect. But also, the game changer for me was when I realized that all of this wasn't making them more mature Christians either.
Fascinating. And again, we're going to talk about relationships and college students. And for if you're a mom driving in a minivan with kids in the back right now, it's not even going to pass PG level. So don't worry too much about that. But part of that is the idea of, we think of intimacy among college students and we think of things that are physical in there. But you actually talk a lot about in the book about how, well, it's much more than that. Not that it's not that in a marriage context, or in college students, maybe it's often outside of a marriage context, but it's much more than that. Tell us how you went from physical intimacy to relational and more, because that's what you have a line in your book that sort of points to that I won't quote right now just because mom's in the minivans. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So this was also a shift in why we use the word intimacy, although oftentimes, we all often think pretty carnally about that. But honestly, my students, yeah, they were talking about dating and those sorts of things, but they were also talking a lot about their families. College students have a major transition from being a dependent to an independent. They still spend so much time in my office trying to figure this out. And boy, we just don't have as many books coming out of Christendom about that as we do Christian dating and the like. And then also friendships. Roommates, fewer and fewer of my emerging adults are getting married, or I see higher rates of in widowhood. We see a rise in singles in our church. Those who may be committing their lives to singleness in a biblical ethic, and it's just one of those shifting landscapes. But we needed to essentially needed to broaden the idea about how we think about our faith in Christian relationships, and it just had to move, not excluding, but move further beyond and outside of just simply romantic relationships.
Fascinating. And again, not that those are excluded from that, but romantic relationships are not the center of the conversation. So what does then intimacy mean beyond romantic relationships? Because again, I would say to you that as I'm a husband, I'm a dad. I have a deep, intimate relationship with my wife. I have an intimate relationship with my daughters. I have 3 amazing daughters. And maybe my parents, but I maybe particularly as a man, I don't use the word intimate relationship to describe, though I think you could. I mean, I've got some best friends. So what does intimacy mean beyond that?
Yeah, and this was a major sort of journey for me in this book, but broadening out into these 3 motifs: romantic relationships, friendship, and family, which coincidentally, and well, not coincidentally, providentially, are also these 3 motifs that God uses in Scripture to communicate things about God's self to us, and has been throughout the whole narrative of Scripture. But as it turns out, intimacy has a lot more to do with the gospel and our discipleship than I had originally ever thought. And so I take a stab at sort of defining intimacy in the book, and I say that the highest aim of intimacy is a generative closeness that refreshes and affirms one's identity and value while simultaneously doing the same for the other person. And as I began to unpack that in the book, it really pushes that idea towards the fact that what God is doing by inviting us into intimate relationships with each other and with Him is that this is all wound up in how we understand who God is and how we understand who we are as Christians. So it's more than just, trying to, successfully live with my husband in harmony under the same roof, which is great. We're for that, but
we're for that.
It's deeper. Yeah, we're for that. That's a good thing. Who takes out the garbage? We need to know these things, but it's more. It's more than that, and that was really amazing to me.
Yeah, who takes out the garbage is a never-ending question. But here's the great thing. Now that I have young adult children, they take out the garbage, but that's another story for
Yes.
later. Literally right now, I literally just look at my garbage this morning saying, Caitlin, anyway, you need to get this out. But that's, part of the joy of having them. All right, so the book is Knowing and Being Known, Hope for All Our Intimate Relationships. And we're going to also open up the calls so people can kind of join in the conversation. Let me also remind you, we're going to give away 5 copies of Knowing and Being Known, Hope for All Our Intimate Relationships. Remind you that the reason we give away books is not because you call in and say, am I caller number 7? Nope, it's because you have an insightful comment or a thoughtful question. And then I have the privilege of giving away some of these books, Knowing and Being Known, Hope for All Our Intimate Relationships. I'm intrigued by the whole theme of this, right? And partly maybe, Aaron, just kind of where I am right now in life. My father died earlier this year, and I was just down at his house and took some of his things. My stepmom's still living, his widow's still living. And she was like, why don't you go through and see some of his stuff? And, there are things I learned about my dad that all wonderful things. But my dad told me once that he grew up and his father he never heard his father tell him he loved him his whole life. He said, I knew he loved me, he just never did that. And then, my dad's not particularly that way, but a great man. We became very close later in life, not younger, but very close later in life. But even as we approach the intimacy of a father-son relationship, we came from a culture that's just not, you sort of just, if you needed each other, you called each other and you told each other big news and you see each other at holidays. And so I don't come from a family of origin where this is a strength. And then, of course, I got 3 daughters, and I think men learn a lot from their daughters. So like our backgrounds and the culture all around us do shape how we think about intimacy. So help us to think about that, because maybe for some of us, we're like, what do we even mean by that? What does that mean? We're going for long walks with our best friends? Is that hopeful or hopeless for men who seem to be less inclined for some of these things? Just unpack it for a while and just go full chaplain mode. Unpack for a while. We got a little time.
Great to have permission to go full chaplain mode. I think the simplest way to put the finger on this is that whether we know it or not, whether we like it or not, we are doing theology in the way we engage each other. Family, friendship, romantic relationships, anything in that spectrum. We're in it. We are doing theology. We are trying to figure out who God is, where God is, who is supposed to be controlling this, who is supposed to be responsible for the fact that my kids have special needs and now my life doesn't look like I thought it was going to, or I got married and I thought this was going to work and now I'm divorced at 26, or who is responsible for making sure I'm not single my whole life? There's just all of these questions that don't necessarily fall to the best practices and behaviors mode. Now, don't hear me say that behaviors aren't important, but at the end of the day, our intimate relationships are doing more. And on the flip side, they also have the ability to begin to help us understand more about the gospel and God. So yeah, it's one of those things where we do premarital counseling with students because it's always wedding season when you work at a college. Always, they're always getting engaged. And my husband is a marriage and family counselor, so we're doing a lot of this with students, and they're like, so should we be praying together? Like, what this whole faith component to our relationship? Like, we'll go to church, and that's right. That's good, right? What is this supposed to look like? And I think in many ways, for all the content that we have about dating and marriage, we don't necessarily have a robust theology of intimacy that helps us understand that at the end of the day, there's something about the proximity and the intimacy, for example, that I would have with my husband, that means that not only are we able to really see each other and know each other like in probably the best and most intimate and proximate ways, but that also means that when we're beginning to slide into the lies that the enemy tries to sell us, I've got somebody close enough and keen enough into who I am to be able to be the first person, the brother on the front lines, to be able to be like, hey, what's going on? The person who can intervene, and the person who in that intervention can call me back, can appeal to the Holy Spirit in me to say, hey, this is a lie. This is not who you are. This is not who Christ said you are. you're living in scarcity, but you are free and full and beloved. And I know this may sound just a little cheesy, like who would actually say this? Like who would actually like say this to each other? But I believe there are both explicitly and implicit ways that we can do this in relationships. And I now try to do that differently because of this research.
So good, so good. I would say I have similar language, but it's a little more bro when I say to my close friends. A little more bro than the way you described it. Hey, listen, we're going to take your calls as well. Let me invite you to call in with us. Our phone number is 877-548-3675. Again, maybe you got questions about how to build deeper relationships, what it's like to walk in intimate friendships. 877-548-3675. We're back with Aaron Moniz in just a second. Okay, we're back. Ed Stetzer Live. We're already jumping into a great conversation. Your calls are starting to come in as well. We're talking about relationships. The book is Knowing and Being Known, Hope for All Our Intimate Relationships. And I am fascinated by this topic, in part because it seems to me that most people I know, like I'm in a small group of people, like we have a small group at Mariners Church, and we're building relationships, but a lot of people don't, once you get to know them, they don't have like intimate friends. They have, I think, and again, I don't know, this is a stereotype. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Aaron. By the way, it's Moniz. I've been saying Moniz. It's Moniz. But for a lot of people, they sort of have like series of people they could go to who are surface level friends. But man, somebody you're gonna know and be known to is a whole different thing. And I've treasured that. You know, I've had a best friend for a long time. Matter of fact, Eric Geigers, the pastor of Mariners Church, been my best friend for a while. I said once to him, "Man, I'm glad we're best friends." And he said, "Well, you're one of my best friends," and so it kind of hurt my feelings. But no, I'm having fun. But we kind of like, and not just I have a few other close friends who we check on each other, like we check the state of their soul when I see them a little out of balance, or when they see me a little out of balance. We say something to one another. But what I've learned is most people don't have people who will say stuff to them, which is pretty alarming when you look at the pages of Scripture and the way Scripture describes relationships, or even as you've done in the character of God himself. You know, God exists in relationship for Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and more. So and in some ways, I think this is a countercultural thing. So when we say the world doesn't have these kind of relationships, we're going to go deeper. But talk to me first about, I got several questions, but let me also throw it open to the calls one more time. 877-548-3675. Maybe you got questions about knowing and being known, building and growing intimate relationships. Again, 877-548-3675. Also, I'd love to hear how some of you kind of foster and sustain those kinds of relationships. What practices do you have? Again, 877-548-3675. Okay, I'm a man, you're a woman. Is there a difference in these things? Is that all stereotype? How do you address those questions?
Yeah, unfortunately, there is a difference, and it's kind of a sad one because, as you sort of noted, with guys, I think we've made it harder for guys to have really like friendship as an intimate relationship. I feel like there's culturally, so sort of here we are in North America, kind of Western culture. Women have a good bit more freedom to sort of disperse our needs for different forms of intimacy as a person amongst different platonic relationships. But it's been tougher, I think, for guys. And there's you can kind of see this in C.S. Lewis's The Four Loves. His chapter on friendship, he really bemoans the difficulty of guys trying to be friends, and some of the cultural things that get in the way of that. So I wish it were a little bit more on par.
Mm-hmm.
But I also believe that there's hope if we are in the local church and we're thinking specifically about our marriages. Like I feel like a lot of local churches are invested in healthy marriages. We do seminars, sermon series, these sorts of things. But if we sort of shift a little bit and talk about the art of friendship, I believe not only will that be valuable to a wider demographic of people in our churches, but it will actually also make our marriages stronger. I think there's ways to begin to talk about this for men and women, where we can have this avenue to I don't know, change cultural, do some shifting where people will be drawn to this place where men and women with other guys and women with other women and just in marriages, outside of marriages, are able to have really healthy friendships that enhance and cause flourishing for their other relationships. So yeah, it is a little different between guys and gals, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think it's Arthur Brooks' writings has really been helpful for me on
Yeah.
several things about happiness and relationships. And he has this reel that sort of went viral. It says, if the husband dies, the wife's going to be fine, but if the wife dies, the husband, and talks about in terms of happiness. He did a study on happiness. Is that because for most men they're really, I think, I'm not quite sure how he said it, but their only best friend is their wife. Where for many women, they've got best friends and they continue those relationships after. So I think we can look to some differences that are certainly between the two. But let's talk about cultural messages in general. And by the way, then we're going to go to calls. I keep saying we're going to go to the calls, but Aaron, I got questions. I want to ask questions. So, and I'm the radio host. I get to.
That's right.
Again,
you get to do
maybe
what you
got
want.
questions. I guess it's fun. Exactly. It's if you got questions, or maybe you got an example of how you maintain long-term friendships and relationships. 877-548-3675. One more time with the number, 877-548-3675. Okay, so cultural messages, inside and outside the church, they seem to distort our proper view of these kinds of intimate relationships. Unpack that for a little bit, and then we'll go to the calls.
Yeah, I really dive into this in chapters 2 and 3, which, and even then, I'm only scratching the surface. But we've adopted in a lot of ways, sadly, in our churches, some cultural messages that we may have not been paying attention to in the way that they have been affecting us. One classic one is that in an effort to elevate marriage, we've actually oftentimes created what Peter Volk refers to as romance idolatry. And what that does then is we see this with the singles in our churches, right? They're the ones that really help us understand that oftentimes we do these either explicit or implicit things that cause us to think that to be a successful person, to be a successful adult, you have to be married and married successfully to a certain point. And that singles we're really not sure what to do with them because, again, we don't really know how to have, in many cases, a picture of a flourishing celibate life. We just have to say, oh, honey, you'll find someone someday, right? We only know how to kind of direct people towards marriage, not because we necessarily thought through that marriage should be for everyone or that person might have a calling to be married, but because we have this romance idolatry that has infected. And what that does, it also puts a lot of pressure on marriages and makes our marriages a little bit more difficult. And so in many ways, and this is very multifaceted, I'm just skimming across the top here, but there are ways that a cultural message that says, you're only like a really fully successful person if someone's dating you, or, it's a little bit more, again, carnal with the secular messages, but we've taken them and adopted them and sort of baptized them a little bit into our churches with similar damage being done. But the good news is we can acknowledge that and course correct it because it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, totally. And I should say, in the history of relationships, and particularly even of marriage, love marriage is a relatively new invention, not practiced around much of the world, and it really has ramifications that sometimes we've just adopted it fully without thinking through. This is why when you're 3 years into your marriage and the feelings have gone away, that so many people don't know what to do because they bought fully into this idea that's more of a Disney musical than it is necessarily a long-term marriage. But anyway, another story for another day. Let's take some calls. We're going to go to Raj in Oklahoma. Raj, you're live in the air. Go right ahead with your question or comment.
Yeah, I was just wondering if some of the issues with our interpersonal relationships may be because we don't respect the other gender's differences. In other words, when my mind is set up to put things in compartments and to just take one thing and finish it and go to the next and put things in boxes, whereas I'm finding out that women tend to make decisions based on emotions and then sometimes uses logic to justify it. Maybe that's why I'm still single.
Oh, Raj, that is great, Raj. And I let me put you on hold for just a second, Raj. Great call too. If you'll hold on, Raj, we're going to give you a copy of "Known and Being Known: Hope for All Our Intimate Relationships." I do believe that may have won the best call of the show, and we haven't even started that as well. But we are going to take a little break at the bottom of the hour, and we're going to come back, give you the invite to answer that question as well. Raj is a friend of the show too. He's got great calls and great questions all the time. But let me give you just a quick 30 seconds, if you don't mind. Give me 30 seconds to begin to answer the question about understanding men and women, and then we'll come back after the break and do some more. Aaron, go ahead. Give me 30 seconds on the first part of that answer. Oh,
yeah.
We lost Aaron. Aaron, don't worry. We ran out of time. No worries. We had a little technological glitch there. You just hold on for just a second. We're going to be back in just a moment, and we're going to continue our conversation. Again, let me invite you with your calls. 877-548-3675. Again, that's 877-548-3675. Stay with us here at Ed Stetzer Live. We're going to continue with Aaron in just a moment. Okay, we're back. Ed Stetzer Live. Hey, the calls are coming in. Kind of interesting. And I was wondering. Sometimes we get calls, lots of calls. Sometimes we don't get lots of calls. It depends on the topic. But I love the fact that you're interested in this. Let's go to Jesse in Chicago with his comment. Jesse, you're live on the air.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to comment about something that I heard on your TV show, and where men don't have too many intimate relationships as opposed to women. And I think, I know because I've experienced it where it's not so much scared, but I for lack of a better word, I guess I would use that word, to just initiate these relationships that we so desperately need, because they exhort us, they encourage us, they speak life into our lives, and from experience, I mean, nothing's more fulfilling than to have people pour into you, and you pour into other people's lives, and just being a positive influence, a godly influence. Is really what I wanted to say. I mean,
I think it's great. I think you're right on.
I want to encourage not only men, but men and women, because there are so many who need and yearn this, but don't have the courage to step out and to pursue and to pour out and pour in to other people. You know, so I just wanted to share that comment. And
I think it's a great comment, Jesse. And if you'll hold on just a second, we want to give you a copy of the book. It's Knowing and Being Known: Hope for All Our Intimate Relationships. Great comment. And, I guess, there's been this, it wasn't actually, I was actually citing Arthur Brooks about, intimate relationships, and he was drawing on the longitudinal Harvard study, and part of that drew out happiness as well, and did see the connection with the relationships there. You've taken a more theological, personal, devotional sort of approach, which I like there. I mean, your dissertation, not the same thing as your book, but in your book, which I like. But, Jesse, I think, hits it right. And for men, it appears, it's almost like there are self-revelatory steps. Like, man, I'm going to open up a little bit to you, then see if you open up a little bit to me. And again, it's not true for all men. It's not true for all women. But I'm just saying that's been some observed in research. So then Jesse's kind of comment is this is something that we need. So how do we get to a more holistic approach of knowing and being known? That's a key part of the book, Knowing and Being Known. So how do we get to a more holistic approach of doing that? Oh, do we have?
Yeah,
oh, there you're back. Okay,
sorry,
good.
trying to be thoughtful here. Yeah, there's an article in I think it was 2021 where they were talking about a recession of friendship for men. I think it was the Survey Center on American Life that pulled together some stats about this, and talking about the fact that in many ways this is a capital moment for us to be able to actually turn the tide. I think many men, like the caller just articulated, really are hungry for this. And even though women, we said, have a little bit more room for this, a lot of us are just lonely, and we just need this. We need companionship, but I think that's at a surface level. What we really understand is that it's not just the presence of another person, as valuable as that is, but there's something about our humanity that is tethered to being in relationship with somebody else in a way that deepens our ability to be seen and to be known and to be able to reciprocate that for the other person. So I believe there is a theological aspect here. And I don't want to over spiritualize it too much, because in many ways it's very sometimes simple practices and intentionality where we just take a chance to go out and connect with people. But we also have to understand that intimacy requires vulnerability, and that's often where many of us get stuck, because vulnerability is risky. It's just necessary, and doing it well can be tough.
For sure, and you're definitely going to get hurt by doing that. I mean, that's part of the journey as well. Not easy journey either. Okay, let's go to I think it's Saint in Georgia. Saint, you're live on the air.
Yes, thank you so much for taking my call. I was mentioning to your telephone person, I've just been going through sickness for more than half my life, and used to be in community many years ago with my church, my faith family and everything, and some of those people I still keep in touch with. But I just find that I know that for me personally, I tend to retreat when I go through a lot, and I'm kind of going through a lot of things right now and don't really have that support anymore. But I have the support of my mom, and of course she and we have our own issues. There's so much family drama, and I keep asking God, for people to walk with, because that's what he did for me before. Despite the fact that I have all of my quote unquote bag of specialties and things that I'm dealing with, I miss that support, and in finding it's so important. I don't consider myself a lonely person. I like being with people, but I like solitude as well. But I'm thinking that maybe
let's ask Aaron. Yeah, maybe let's ask Aaron about how to build some of those new relationships. Okay, let's do it. So hold on for just a second, Saint. And if you'll hold on too, Saint, first of all, love your name, by the way, but want to give you a copy of Knowing and Being Known, Hope for All Our Intimate Relationships. So in Saint's case, she wants to move, into some community, into relationships. Be practical. How do we start building some of those relationships?
Yeah, absolutely. And Saint, thank you for sharing that. I'm so sorry for what you're going through. I know that's really tough. Difficult circumstances can be very isolating, and that's where a lot of us find ourselves oftentimes, in a switch of circumstances, just like you're describing. But intimacy is something we never grow out of. We never stop desiring it, and being prayerful for it is a great first step. And in many cases, I've found in my life that I may take certain people for granted, or look around and not really see certain folks as the kind that I would deem someone who had the potential to become a close friend. But we often have relationships that are a little bit more what we would call economic relationships, coworkers or neighbors, or people that these are not intimate relationships. But then when we begin to see the possibilities, sometimes this can shift, and we can begin to maybe make a little bit more of an invitation. We can begin to sort of invite people into some trust building or some vulnerability. And I would say just to keep your eyes open, because if you're praying for God to bring people into your life, it might surprise you who God is bringing into your life. But I love that you have your mom, but it sounds like having more people, different kinds of people coming around you and being with you during this time is really important. And it's not easy, because honestly, we're all kind of bad at this, to be very honest. Adult friendship is really hard. Have sort of a cultural artifact canon like we do with romance to pull from. But I just would want to encourage you that you may be surprised by who might be right there next to you.
But I love your adult friendship is hard. I think, I saw some silly reel saying that, the biggest fake thing about the TV show Friends is that there were 8 people who had this level of friendship, and they're young as young adults. And it is, and even in my case, it's waned. Being a pastor probably helps, because you have this relationship that's birthed in the context of a congregation. But man, it's hard to encourage, and often to encourage men has been even harder in that context as well. But I love the practical nature of the question. I think let's go to Ann in Eastern Pennsylvania. Ann, you're live on the air with your comment or question.
First, thank you for your very significant show, which always makes me think and grow.
Awesome.
My question is, I'm going to a continuing care community and meeting a whole bunch of new people probably for the first time in many decades. So do you have any advice for me to do that efficiently?
That's a super question and very specific. And for me, I was just saying I have young adult daughters, but I have parents that were talking to parents and grandparents of my kids. We're talking about these very things and those new relationships that are there. So help Ann out. And Ann, if you'll hold on to, we want to give you a copy of the book, Known and Being Known. But what advice would you have for Ann, Aaron?
Yeah, I am hopeful for this transition for you, Ann. And I know it can be a little scary meeting new people at a new stage of life. But in some ways, the practicality of it is if there's opportunities to get out and get connected where people are hanging out socially, if there's events, all of us might feel differently about how extroverted or introverted we are, but I would encourage you initially to try to get out and meet as many people as possible. But I will tell you one thing that I have found just as a chaplain, and this is really just more of a ministry trick, but I think it helps, is when people really feel heard, when they have someone who gives them their undivided attention, who asks follow-up questions. Tell me more about that, or that's interesting. That sounds like something asking questions that really get into the interest of their life, which is a very small practice that most of us just don't do very well, or very often, myself included. But a lot of times that can actually fast track you to making a new friend or making a few new friends, because even if they can't pinpoint it, they walk away from an encounter feeling that just warmth of somebody caring about them, of somebody wanting to know them. And it's a great starting point to build off of. So that's just some practical things, and best of luck with you in this transition.
Super. Good question, Ann. And again, remember, we're going to give you a copy of Knowing and Being Known, Hope for All Our Intimate Relationships. We're going to continue our conversation. We got one more segment left. Maybe you got examples of where you built bridges of really intimate relationships with friends on the way and for the journey. And if so, or you got questions about how to do so, our number is 877-548-3675. We got one more segment. Again, 877-548-3675. Okay, we're back. Ed Stetzer Live. We're having a great conversation with Aaron Moniz. Aaron, make sure I said it correctly. Say it so at least one time it was said correctly. What's your last name?
Moniz.
That's what I said. Okay, good. I didn't say that at first, though, because I failed. And so you were telling me that your family sometimes fails as well. So, but I apologize for that.
It's all
and
good.
you were a chaplain, associate chaplain at Baylor University, and working with college students, but also then helping us to think about relationships here. The book has been Knowing and Being Known, Hope for All Our Intimate Relationships by Aaron Moniz. And again, I found it helpful. That's why I want Aaron on the program. I've known Aaron in more than one context and been cheering her on in her new role as well. So let's go to the phone calls. We've got Angela from Plantation, Florida. Angela, you're live on the air. Jump right in, please.
Yes, good morning. This is Angela. Thank you for answering my call. I am originally from Colombia. I grew up in there. I came to the United States when I was 18 and married in this country and have a daughter that is 42. Now I am in the 70s, semi-retired, but we live together. And I'm finding that the difference in ages, and also I believe probably the difference in culture, are really getting on our way to communicate, to know each other. I'm a Christian, and I try to just let it go and let it be. But sometimes it's like, oh my word, it's big difference in ages. The younger generation, especially from this country, thinks a lot different than I think, and their hopes and their values are so different that sometimes it's very, very, very rough. So I don't know.
Well, let's see if Aaron can give us some advice on how to do that. Angela, thank you for your great call. If you'll stay on the line as well, we want to give you a copy of Knowing and Being Known. So, all right, so you've got generational distinctives. She talked about she came over as a child from Colombia, and then now, I guess, second generation, a generation away. So more, whatever term you want to use, more less Colombian, more Americanized. So you've got generational and cultural differences. How do you build the bridges of intimacy across those? I need you to answer all the hard questions, Aaron. Tell us.
Yes, we'll just fix all of this immediately. Oh, no, Angela,
Yes.
I appreciate your question, because as a person who works in higher ed, and I think, Ed, you can sympathize with this, it's like we get older, and the college students just stay 18 to 24. And boy, if I don't feel the age difference every single year.
Same.
Just trying
and you're
to,
still young.
try
You're
to
still young. I don't even
navigate.
want to hear it. I'm like 58, and I'm like, they look. Are you really a college student? You look like a middle schooler. So.
Oh, Ed, I'm 44, but I might as well be 102. I mean, with these college students,
true.
right? It's
true.
But it is,
Yep.
it is definitely, and it's getting hard. I was reading an article the other day how even within Gen Z, this sort of conglomerate generation, how they're writing that older Gen Z and younger Gen Z are almost like two different generations, because that's how fast technology and culture are going. So, Angela, be encouraged. We're a lot of us in that boat. And in many ways, it's really not about trying to bring everyone together so that we all see things from eye to eye. I think that the gaps are really significant. There's this wonderful, incredible just analogy. It's so brilliant, and of course it would be, because it's in the Bible, where Paul talks about the body being how we think about who we are when we all come together. And the eye can't say to the foot that I don't need you, but it's that necessity of difference. The fact that I need people who are older than me, younger than me, who think differently from me, who have these cultural differences. So in many cases, it's really just about having a posture of learning and giving in reciprocity, in a way where we're using those differences to really care for each other well and learn from each other well, which is not always the way we think about it. But sameness is not really what we're going for so much as being able to care for one another, and then use those differences that we bring to help each other and shape each other. So I just want to encourage you and say, keep bringing what you bring to those relationships.
Yeah, Angela, super. I think I already mentioned, but stay on the line, and we're going to give you a copy of the book. It's Knowing and Being Known, Hope for All Our Intimate Relationships. Okay, so we want to get there, Aaron. We want to get to intimate, healthy relationships. I think even people who want to acknowledge that, sometimes a little too bro culture, like, well, I don't need to think that way. I need some hunting buddies. No, you need some people in your life. So and I don't even hunt. I don't know why I said hunting, but it's like whatever. So then it just seemed very bro to say hunting or fishing or something, or going to a sports game, which is all good. I'm not opposed to any of those things. But, what are some of the essential elements of healthy relationships? You spend a lot of this in the book. What are some essential elements of healthy relationships?
Yeah, and I think in some cases, some folks read the book and maybe are a little disappointed that it's not more about the how, because I hope more of that comes. Like, I'm hoping that the content sort of springs from this launching pad, because we need how to have adult friendships, how to do intergenerational, relationships, these sort of things. But when it comes to, like what you're saying, how to push in and lean more, we do actually have best practices. There are people like the Gottman Institute and others who have studied this for years. I would love to see some of that more utilized in our churches, some of the practicalities of relationship building. But at the hub of that are two big things that we can all pay more attention to, which is communication and trust building. And we just aren't really hardwired to think about, are we doing that well in our relationships? We sometimes take these things for granted, or we're too niche in how we think about the relationships in our lives. But some of this is taking some of these starting points and saying, how can we continue to deepen this? So, for example, my husband, he's a part of a few fantasy football teams. And he really does it because, especially in one case, these are friends from high school that were life-changing. I mean, really brought him to Christ, huge in his life and his journey, but they're scattered all over the country. And so fantasy football league is a lot of fun. But what they do is once a year, they get together and they go somewhere. They pick a city and they go spend a long weekend together as a way to take something that may be just sort of fun and superficial, but actually intentionally get time together, to be together, to learn about each other's lives, to strengthen those ties. And in some ways, just some intentional moves that take the commonalities that get us into, your hunting club, which I know you're very fond of, Ed, all the hunting you do.
Yes, it's my,
and just
people.
Take that. And take
You're
that
in Texas. You're in everyone hunts in Texas. I'm in
That's
California.
True. That's
we don't
true.
do that
What am I
much out
saying?
here. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But it's a small move. The book club, the coming over to watch movies, game nights, these are all fun. These are all great. But they can also be great starting points to say, how do we take this thing that's already bringing us together and how do we press in? And sometimes it takes a courageous person just to say, hey, can I talk about something that's going on in my life with you guys? And so if I'm going to provide anything practical today, I think those are small moves that we can all pay attention to.
Those are great moves, though. And I think part of this, too, is there is a countercultural nature to this, is that right now our phones and our cable news choices and our talk radio and our social media are all isolating us from neighbors and others. I think there's a countercultural nature to being in relationship. Listen, I got about 30 seconds left. Can you give us a closing exhortation on the way out about how we can take next steps in relationships?
Yes, you are made for intimacy and you are made to know and be known. So look to the people around you and pray to see those opportunities to be connected to folks so that you can have your people.
Aaron Moniz is a chaplain, associate chaplain at Baylor University, the author of the book that we've been talking about today, Knowing and Being Known, Hope for All Our Intimate Relationships. Let me remind you that Moody Radio is a ministry of Moody Bible Institute, and of course, EdCentral Live is a production of Moody Radio, also of Moody Bible Institute. Thanks for listening. Look forward to seeing you again next Saturday. Thanks for listening.
Let me help you sort through tough questions that lead to ultimate answers. I'm Michael Rydelnik, and each weekend on Open Line, I offer biblical, honest, and down-to-earth insights and encouragement to help you understand God's truth and apply it to daily life. Join the Bible study on Open Line with me, Dr. Michael Rydelnik, every Saturday.
Tune into the conversation by subscribing to the Open Line podcast today.